So Maghrib comes in at 7:42 AbdelRahman. And so, I'm just plan to end at 8.
Yeah, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah.
We'll just give everyone a few minutes, inshallah, to hop in. The Instagram live is going and Facebook, so we'll just give everyone a few minutes, inshallah, before we get started. Alrighty. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Welcome back to our Wednesday night, our series, Preparing for Ramadan. In this series, we've spent the last 3 sessions talking about some of the different elements of Ramadan in preparation for the sacred month. As you know, the month of Ramadan is just a few short weeks away. And so this is a chance for us to get together and spend really just a handful of hours, just a few small sessions, reflecting on some of the different ways and trying to discover and strategize how we can have the most successful Ramadan, inshallah, of our lives. In the past few sessions, we talked about the month of Ramadan from a historical perspective, how sacred the month of Ramadan is. We talked about the month of the Quran. We talked about establishing a relationship with the Quran. And last session, we spoke about the importance of making dua and how to make better dua during the month of Ramadan. So if you want to catch up on any of these sessions, I think they are preserved on my Instagram IGTV. So you can check them out there. And inshallah, we are going to try to push them out on the Qadam podcast as well. But that will take a little while to happen, probably a few days or so. So if you want to catch them before then they're on the IGTV. Inshallah, tonight's session is not going to be particularly long, but it's an important session. It's regarding how to make Ramadan special and how to make it a transformative month beyond the fasting and the prayer of the month of Ramadan. And there's a couple of reasons why this topic is really important, because we know that fasting and prayer, generally speaking, we know that these are 2 of the highlighted, essential, critical pieces of the month of Ramadan. We know that fasting and prayer, there's a reason why they have been generally ordained. But like we went over in the first session, the month of Ramadan is a month that is so vast that it is not limited by 1 or 2 actions that have been ordained, right? So it's not like a month where this is the only thing that you can do. For example, in the month of Dhul Hijjah, it's a blessed month and you get rewarded for doing, different deeds during this month. But in the month of Dhul Hijjah, if you want to make Hajj, you have to make Hajj. Like that's just it. So you can't say that, well, I want to make Hajj, but I want to do it from here, right? There's a certain requirement. There's a certain threshold that a person has to go through in order to get the reward of Hajj. But the month of Ramadan is 30 days where you can do a variety of things, such as diverse options and offerings as far as, taking advantage of this time. So the reason why this particular session is important is because even though we know generally fasting and prayer are ordained, there are times and there are situations in which, number one, fasting or praying is not possible. And so, for example, if a person is ill, if they're not feeling well, then their fast is to be avoided. If their physician tells them that you should not be fasting for, a variety of reasons, medical reasons, then they can't be fasting. Okay. Or if a person is, if a woman is on her period, or maybe she's pregnant and she chooses not to fast, or maybe she's nursing and fasting would it would be detrimental to the pregnancy or to the nursing of the child, then fasting is excused, right? She's excused from fasting in that way. And then on top of that, also prayer. We know that when a woman is on her menstrual cycle in the week of her menstruation, then she cannot pray. So there has to be, right, by definition, there has to be a variety of options in order for people to take advantage of this blessed month that are not just limited to fasting and prayer, because as we just said, there are certain scenarios where a person can't. And then on top of that, even if a person can pray and can fast, sometimes when a person does something so often and so frequently over and over again, it becomes kind of robotic, and so there's some points where a person, goes into their Tarawih prayer, and because they pray Tarawih every night, and because it's something that they do every year, and because it's something that they do the entire Tarawih prayer, it's almost like they just go into autopilot, right? And so it's important for us to kind of explore some of the different ways in which we can benefit from Ramadan beyond just the things that we're used to. All right. So Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, he gives us three things. And if you guys can't tell from this series and these sessions, I enjoy things that are in lists or numbers because it makes it easier to remember. So Imam al-Ghazali, in his encyclopedia, in his magnum opus, like this massive work that he wrote called the Ihya fi Ulumuddin, he wrote a book on the virtues of fasting and the virtues of Ramadan, and he talked about how there are three different levels to a person's fast, and you can extend that and say that there are three different experiences that a person can have in the month of Ramadan. The first is that he said that the first level of fasting, level number one, is the level that we are all used to, which is food, drink, and sexual relationships during the daylight hours. So that's like the basic level of fasting. Now, I know that that's a big deal. We talked about during the first session how fasting is no small feat. If somebody's able to fast for 29 or 30 days, stay away from food and drink, and they do it successfully, that's something to be celebrated. But Imam al-Ghazali, he says that, there are things that are even beyond, even greater than just engaging and staying away from food and drink. So this is the first level of fasting. And this is what has been ordained for us in the Quran. The second level, Imam al-Ghazali says, which is not an obligation, but it is something that the hadith speaks about. It is something that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ talks about quite frequently, actually, in the hadith, is the fasting of a person, or the Ramadan of a person that stays away from, number one, listening to things that are problematic. Number two, looking at things or watching things that are problematic. Number three, talking about things that are problematic. Or number four, using their other organs, their hands, their feet, etc., to go and do things that are, problematic, that are sinful, or that are, very disliked. So what does this mean? And where does this come from? It's very interesting, subhanAllah, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gives us like a plethora of ahadith in which he talks about how just staying away from food and drink, while important, if a person does that and completely and totally negates, the spiritual or the character element of their being, that person's fast is qualitatively reduced near to zero. And so the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, there's a hadith that said that, man lam yada' qawl az-zur wal amal bihi, that a person that does not give up evil speech and evil deeds while fasting. فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ فِي أَنْ يَدَّعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need this person to go hungry and thirsty all day long. So this hadith, of course, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not saying that you're excused, right? That's not the language. He's not saying that, if a person says bad things and does bad things, then they should just give it all up. No, but what he's saying is that in reality, if a person is not even trying, if a person is not even putting forth an effort to stay away from those things, then really their priorities are out of place. Because fasting is supposed to have a transformational effect on a person. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, رُبَّ صَائِمٍ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ إِلَّا الْجُوعُ. That there are some people who fast and they don't take anything from their fast. They don't gain any experience. They don't gain any benefit or reward from their fast except al-ju', hunger. And there's another narration that says there are some people that they don't gain anything from their night prayer, their tahajjud, their tarawih, their qiyam, except that they're tired, except that they're exhausted. So what is this saying? That fasting is critical, it's foundational, it's essential for those who can, of course, but at the same time, if we want to ruin the quality of it, then we will not care about the other things that we have to be careful with. And this is why some scholars, subhanAllah, from the past, and this is not the majority opinion, but this is just to tell you how serious it is. Some scholars held the opinion that since the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used such strong language in forbidding certain actions while fasting, that doing those actions breaks your fast. Okay? So one of the hadiths says, إِذَا أَصْبَحَ أَحَدُكُمْ يَوْمًا صَائِمًا, that if one of you wakes up one morning and you're fasting, فَلَا يَرْفُثْ وَلَا يَجْهَلْ, then you should not use bad language and you should not behave, with ignorance. فَإِنْ إِمْرَؤٌ شَاتَمَهُ أَوْ قَاتَلَهُ, and if a person slanders you or tries to fight or argue with this person, okay, فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي صَائِمٌ إِنِّي صَائِمٌ, that tell that person, look, I'm fasting, I'm fasting. So some scholars, they said, look, if a person violates some of these recommendations, some of them held the opinion that it actually breaks their fast. Okay? Some scholars even held the opinion that backbiting broke the fast of people. Now, again, this isn't the majority opinion, nor is it the opinion that I hold, nor is Sheikh Abdul Nasser. But the reason I'm telling you is to understand the gravity of those deeds while fasting. Because fasting is supposed to be transformative, right? The analogy that I can give is if a person is trying to engage in some sort of, they go to school, they go to class, they go to graduate school, they're trying to get their master's, their MBA, or they're trying to do some sort of program, fitness program, right, education program, something. Maybe they're trying to learn how to play a sport, maybe they're trying to do something, and they do this for 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Naturally, by the end of the 4th week or the 5th week, you would expect to see some sort of something, right? You would expect to see some change, some difference. A lot of these programs require you to change your schedule. You have to wake up earlier, go to sleep earlier. You're not able to socialize as much. You have to do homework, right? You got to write reports and you got to go over, or if you get a new job, your life is going to change, right? Any of these things, they require a person to change. So these hadith remind us that fasting in this month, and the month of Ramadan, requires not just to complete the fast, but other things in our life also have to change. And this is what Imam al-Ghazali is talking about. He says that, everybody can stay away from food and drink if they are physically able to, if their health is in a place to stay away from food and drink. He says, but how about the people who not only stay away from food and drink while they're fasting, but they also stay away from listening to things that are problematic. Not even talking about it, but listening to it. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He equates those people who listen, not the backbiters, but those who listen to backbiting, those who listen to falsehood, those who listen to slander, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equates that to people who steal from other people. What's the relationship? Well, how is it related? If I sit there and I'm in a room quietly and others are backbiting and they're talking trash about somebody and they're just, and there's no reason. It's not like they're constructive criticism. It's not like they're trying to figure out a situation. It's not like they're, this isn't somebody's therapist, right? We're not talking about the exceptions. We're talking about just good old backbiting, right? Just good old-fashioned tearing into somebody when they're not around, okay? Or slandering, making up lies about that person. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, in chapter 5 in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, سَمَّعُونَ لِلْكَذَبِ. He says, those people who sit there and listen, and they eagerly listen to those lies, like they're chilling, they're just like sitting there taking it all in. He says, آكَلُونَ لِلسُّحْتِ. They are just like those who consume, and take advantage of the wealth and the property of other people. Could you imagine somebody stealing somebody's property? What a crime that is! Like, what an aggression that would be. You just go and steal something from somebody, whether it's like their wallet or their phone or their car. You just take something from them, and how much respect you would lose for that person. How much dignity would be lost in the life of that individual who stole from somebody. The Quran equates listening to lies about people and letting people perpetuate lies to somebody who steals. Why? Because you're allowing people to steal the dignity of somebody. You're allowing people to malign the honor of some person, and that's just like stealing from someone, right? When we sit and backbite, when we sit and slander or listen to that, we are in the process, we are engaged in stealing the God-given right of discretion and respect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to each person. We're stealing that away from them. So Allah ta'ala equates the one who sits and listens to backbiting to the one who steals, unlawfully takes something from somebody else. Okay? So Imam Ghazali says that. He says, control your ears. What are you listening to? Control your eyes. What are you watching? What are you looking at? And this is something that's deeply troubling, right? In this era. SubhanAllah, man, like we have to be honest. And really, I'm going to say this, and it may not be popular or like the most accepted thing to say, but I just have to say it. Social media is a wonderful tool, but it is incredibly dangerous for everybody. For everybody. So many different layers. There's obviously just the straight up explicit stuff, right? The straight up explicit material, the sexual, pornographic, whatever you want to. That stuff is there's not even like there's no difference of opinion, right? And we have to be very careful. I want to advise everybody, myself and everybody, to be really careful, like what you share and what you retweet and what you favorite. I'm always shocked, subhanAllah, when I'm scrolling through my social media accounts and I see that people, they share something, and that thing is, in and of itself is not problematic, that thing, whether it's like a tweet or a post or something. But the person who originally wrote it or who originally authored it is someone that is, so far gone from the moral code that Muslims have. And without realizing it, we are perpetuating and putting that person's persona in front of the eyes and consciousness of people. And it's really, really dangerous. Now, is it wrong to share something good that was said? No. But you have to be careful not to share it with all of the baggage. And there are ways that you can share something without sharing pathways to evil with that thing. The next time you share something on your social media, ask yourself, it might add 30 seconds or 45 seconds to my day, but can I extract this good if I'm worried that the account or that the personality or whatever is problematic? I just saw this the other day. Unfortunately, I saw somebody share something, again, a political position that was held by, somebody from the porn industry. And of course, it wasn't a pornographic post, but the question that I had, and I was just saying, I'm like, subhanAllah, like why, we have to be able to think to that next level. we have to be able to think and say, okay, I can't share this, that this person, whatever action they're doing, even if it's feeding someone who's hungry, taking care of animals, donating clothes, like it's a good deed, that's fine. But you need to find a way to extract that and isolate it, because you need to be able to think to the next level, right? Level 2 or 3, that what happens if a person clicks on this? Again, will you be held accountable? Inshallah not. Who knows? We hope not. But I never want to be part of that equation. I never want to be a part of the equation of sharing, the images or the personality or the persona of something that doesn't represent Allah and His Messenger, right? And we ask Allah to protect us. And again, right, people ultimately make mistakes that are sincere mistakes, but we need to be a little bit careful not to be reckless in the mistakes that we make. If a mistake is sincere, of course Allah forgives, of course, without a doubt. That's the default rule. Person makes a mistake, they feel bad, Allah forgives instantly, right? It's as simple as that. Regret equals forgiveness. We know that. And nadmu tawbah, the Prophet ﷺ said. But we also can't be reckless and flagrant and, habitual in our mistakes, because that perhaps shows a lapse in our regret or our sincerity. Okay? So we got to be really careful with that. So that's the second thing that Imam Ghazali says, staying away from those things. Okay? So what are you listening to? What are you looking at? What are you saying? What are you speaking about? What are you saying? Where are you going to? Right? Where are you going? Where are you spending time? Where are you, what are you doing with your time? Okay? And this is, again, we'll talk about this at the end, but the Ramadan, remember, like many people have said, the Ramadan that we have should not resemble and should not look like the days of the rest of the year. Just like Jabir radiallahu anh, just like he said that, your fasting, the days of your fasting, لا تجعل يوم فطرك كاليوم صيامك, that don't let the days where you eat resemble the days that you're fasting. So things need to be a little bit different. What does that mean? Number one, limit the time that you spend doing things that are generally considered from the most recreational of habits, right? So like watching TV, scrolling through YouTube, social media usage, those kinds of things, right? Just purely from the realm of recreation. We're not talking about like exercise. We're not talking about like reading. We're not talking about like if a person likes to like do a puzzle, right? Those are things that there's some sort of attached benefit to those things, right? Reading, doing a puzzle, spending time with your family, spending time with your kids, spending time with even your friends, okay? Exercising. These are recreational activities that have multiple benefits attached to them. I'm talking about just sheer recreation, like those nights where you should go to bed, you should be asleep, but you're just scrolling through YouTube into the black hole of related videos, right? Or you're scrolling through TikTok and every 1 out of 10 TikToks is actually like pretty interesting, but the other 9 are just people doing the same thing over and over again, or Instagram, etc. You guys get the drill, right? So try to limit those things. Again, not because they're necessarily haram, that's not what I'm saying, but because your time is so rare, right? Ayyam ma'dudat, as Allah Ta'ala says, numbered days. It's so rare that you wouldn't spend those days doing anything else. You shouldn't spend those days doing everything else. Just like if you go on vacation for a week, you're not going to go on vacation and then do the things that you normally do at home on vacation. You want to be able to at least do something different. Don't eat at the same restaurants, eat somewhere new, right? Don't just kind of sit around and do the same thing that you do at home. Get out and do something different, even if it's just walking around and exploring the city, right? So it's taking advantage of that time. And then number 3, Imam al-Ghazali talks about the third level, the third layer that a person can engage in for their Ramadan or their fast. Imam al-Ghazali says, when a person is able to expel from their heart and their mind thoughts that are not worthy of being thoughts during the month of Ramadan. Okay? Now this, obviously, as it sounds, is very challenging. This is not an easy task, right? Because to most people, at most times, our thoughts and our desires and the thoughts that cross our heart and the thoughts that cross our mind, those are things that really, unless a person practices, are things that are somewhat on their own, like they're outside of the realm of our control. And the way that a person can practice to really work on that is not necessarily that they begin by saying, I don't want to have these thoughts, right? But what they do is that they work hard to make sure that their mind and their heart are occupied with the right things. And that leaves the space that would be otherwise taken over by things that are negative or things that are not important. That space is no longer vacant. The heart is no longer vacant. That vessel is filled. And even when something does come across their mind or heart, they respond by something that is better than that, right? So when the nafs brings in a thought or something that's challenging, then the heart or the ruh, the spirit, that iman, that person's faith, responds with something better, okay? And we'll talk about that, inshallah, at the end. So these are the three different levels of fasting that Imam al-Ghazali speaks about. Now, for most of us, we've pretty much engaged at level 1, right? Maybe a little bit of level 2. But level 3 is something that maybe we're hearing about this for the first time right now. Okay? So most people, their Ramadan is spent in the action of fasting and praying. And then there are some people that really change themselves. They don't listen to music. They don't watch movies. They, permissibility, impermissibility aside, halal, haram aside, they just want to change their habits during the month. So they do that. I know some people who work out a lot and they don't go to the gym in Ramadan because they're like, if I go to the gym, it takes up too much time and I want to be able to pray. Again, that's their choice, right? But just to demonstrate that willingness to change is there with some people. And then, the third level is something that we all aspire to be able to do, but it's possible. It's possible. And as we said with the dua, you can transform your dua. It's possible if you just take a few steps. So I have 4 things that I want to share with you, 4 actions that I think if we focus on these 4 things, everybody can do these 4 things in this month, that you will be able to reach, inshallah, not only the first, not the second, but also the third level that Imam al-Ghazali is talking about. Okay? What are these 4 things? Number 1, the first thing is engaging in some level of character refinement. Character refinement. Islah al-nufus, right? Islah al-nafs, rectifying a person's soul, rectifying a person's being, tazkiyatul nafs, tazkiyatul qalb, the purifying of a person's heart, whatever you want to call it, okay? Really, what does this science have to do with a person is that in Islam, this science of purification of the heart is about rectifying a person's character, is about changing them from the inside and making sure that that person is really transformed with their relationship with Allah and their relationship with others. And we learn very powerfully, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ tells us, for example, that those who don't thank others, they're not thankful to Allah. Those who do not thank other people, they are not thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the Prophet ﷺ teaches us in this hadith that there's an intrinsic relationship between how we treat others and our capacity for our relationship with Allah. So if I'm not somebody who's grateful to people, then I'm going to be limited in my gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because gratitude is like a muscle. It's like something that I can use in many different forms and many different applications. So if I have trouble saying thank you and recognizing the blessings that people have given me in my life, then there's very well a major possibility that I'm also somebody who does not adequately take time to reflect on the blessings Allah Ta'ala has given me in my life. Okay? So working on character refinement, purifying one's heart, how does a person do this? How does a person get started in this? Number 1 is that you have to do an assessment of your character. You have to do what's called, muraqaba, muhasaba. You have to take account, and you have to do like this deep assessment of your character. So ask yourself, what are the things about myself that I really, really don't like, that I really wish were different? Is it my temper? Is it laziness? Is it the lack of strength in certain situations or courage in certain situations? Is it my lack of trust in Allah? Is it my judgment? Do I judge people? Do I backbite? Like, these are things. And again, guys, this is a really hard conversation to have. It's really difficult to have this conversation. Now, here's a tip. If you really want to get good answers, just ask people around you. Ask people that can give you genuine feedback, right? And note, those people are not trying to hurt you and damage you. But if you ask them and say, what are some areas of my character that you think I can work on? And those people, like, ask your parents, for example. Ask your spouse. Ask your kids if you have kids. Ask your friends. Ask your siblings. And you'll be able to kind of, detect how serious they're being. But they oftentimes can give you a really quick answer on the level in the area of character. Am I too harsh with people? Am I too rude? Am I too rough? Am I compassionate enough? Do I forgive quickly enough? Am I somebody that holds grudges? Right? So these are all the different sort of ways in which you can assess your character. And then from there, you can address your character and change those things about yourself. Work on those things. How? You fight it, right? If I'm stingy, be generous. And that's the next thing that we're going to talk about, is giving charity. If I'm harsh, be soft. If I'm judgmental, give people excuses. Create excuses for people. Praise them. If I'm too critical, praise people. If I'm not grateful enough, then thank people, right? Start to reverse course on those areas of character that you find are weak. And there's a great book of a poem that that Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, he translated, and he gave a commentary on, called Purification of the Soul. And I believe it's on my Twitter account under that recommended reading list in English. If it's not, then I'll check and I'll add it. But that book is a really good book for us to have in Ramadan, because through fasting, through prayer, through the blessing of the month itself, there is an opportunity. There's like an open door. Shaitan is locked up. There's an open chance for us to really make changes within ourselves. Okay? And that's the first. There's a reason why I put that first, by the way, because everything else that follows, things that you can do outside of fasting, outside of praying, that follow, they require a person to have a character that's being refined, or that is refined. Okay? Number 2 is charity. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was described as being the most generous person. And Aisha radiallahu anha, she described him and said, he was never more generous than he was during Ramadan. This was when he was most generous. Okay? Now, what does charity mean? What does sadaqah mean? Well, sadaqah is very interesting, guys. The word sadaqah actually comes from the 3-letter root Sad, right? Dal, Qaf. Sidq. Sadaqah. Also, sidq or tasdiq share this same root. And those words mean to confirm something, or better is to prove something. Tasdiq means to verify something. Sidq means truthfulness or honesty, something that has been verified. It's been proven, right? That's why Abu Bakr, radiallahu anh, the closest friend and companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his nickname or his title was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Why was he called a Siddiq? Was it because he was very honest? Well, we know he was, but that wasn't the reason why he got the title. The reason why he got the title was because on the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, the miraculous journey that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took from Mecca to Jerusalem to the heavens and back to Mecca, when the Quraysh were trying to use this event as a dramatic rumor to disprove the Prophet ﷺ and to disprove Islam and to sow doubt in the hearts of people that believed in him, when they went to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and they said, do you hear what your companion Muhammad ﷺ, do you hear what he's saying? And Abu Bakr said, what? And this is before the Prophet ﷺ had a chance to tell anybody. They said, do you hear what he's saying? And he said, what is he saying? Abu Bakr responded, what is he saying? They said, he's saying that he went from Mecca to Jerusalem all the way back. Mecca to Jerusalem, to the heavens, that he spoke to Allah, your Lord, and came all the way back in one night. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? And you know what Abu Bakr said? Abu Bakr said, if he said it, then I believe it. If he said it, then I believe it. This is before he even spoke to the Prophet ﷺ. And this is like something that is, literally, it's unbelievable. Literally, it's impossible for a normal human to do this. And so this is an unbelievable feat that Allah Ta'ala blessed the Prophet ﷺ with. So Abu Bakr was given that title as Siddiq because in that moment, what did he do? He verified and authenticated the truthfulness of the Prophet ﷺ without even having spoken to him about that event yet. Okay? So sadaqah, the act of charity, what does that do? And why is the word charity in Arabic tied to the word truthfulness or tied to the word verification or proof? Well, the Prophet ﷺ said, as-sadaqatu burhanun, that sadaqah is the proof. The proof of what? The proof of your faith. Sadaqah is one of the most powerful ways that a person can prove their faith because we love our wealth. We love our wealth. We only give our wealth away for something that we think is worth it, for something that we deem as worth giving money up for. That's what buying something is. When you buy something, you're saying, I think this thing that I'm buying is worth the money that I'm giving for it. Okay? So when we give money as charity, we're not getting anything in return in this life. When we give money, we're not getting anything back. So what are we saying? We're saying, I believe the reward that Allah is holding for me as a reward for this act of sadaqah, I believe it is worth it. Not only is it worth it, but it's better and more than the money that I have. Not only that, but the Prophet ﷺ said what? مَا نَقَصَ مِنَ الْمَالِ الصَّدَقَةِ. That sadaqah will never decrease your wealth. It never takes away from your wealth. When you give charity, it never takes it away. And I swear by Allah, I've experienced this in my life personally. I swear to God, when I've given charity, somehow, some way, it finds its way back. It's just like sadaqah is like a momentary test of your faith, of your trust in Allah. That's what it is. And that's why last year, especially with COVID and with the masajid not being open and accessible and Ramadan being very unique, last year, my wife and I, on the first day of Ramadan, because we knew that we weren't going to have the same access to like the qiyam and all that we used to do at the masajid. My wife and I, like on the first day of Ramadan, we made a pledge. We said, if we scroll on Facebook or whatever, any of social media, by any fundraiser, if there's any fundraiser that is charitable, okay, for somebody, they said, don't scroll by it except that you donate something. Give something. It's so easy nowadays. It's like one click, Face ID, scan, and you've given your money. Give $1, give $5, give 10, give 100, give whatever you can. So the second thing is charity. The second action that you can do, that I can do in the month of Ramadan is charity. And this is exactly what the Prophet ﷺ did during his month of Ramadan. He became more generous and more charitable because the heart is detached from food, from drink. It's detached from the dunya. Allah has taken our heart and he's freed it from the handcuffs and the shackles of the dunya for this month. And he's giving us a taste. This is what true faith feels like. You haven't eaten all day, but you're not worried because you know that you're going to eat at night. So give charity like that. Give your money away, but don't worry. You know it's going to come back to you. You know that Allah promised you, that his messenger promised you, that it never ever decreases in your wealth. So give charity and don't be afraid of it. And realize that every dollar you give is a proof of your relationship with Allah. Okay, so number one is work on purification of the heart, tackle some of those diseases of the heart that we have. Number two is giving charity. Number three is fixing, it has to do with family and friends, your relationships, fixing relationships with family and friends, mending the broken relationships that are there, seeking forgiveness for the people that maybe you transgressed or that you hurt their feelings, or maybe you don't know and you just want to make sure you cover your bases. Okay, so fixing those relationships. And a lot of times that requires, again, that first step. If a person has a lot of arrogance and a person has a lot of kibr, then they're not going to be the ones to reach out and ask for forgiveness. But what are they going to do? They are going to say, oh, this person needs to reach out to me. Why should I be the one to reach out? Why should I be the one to say sorry? This person hurt my feelings. So you see now why the first step had to be purification of the heart. Because if we don't work on purifying our heart, that arrogance is going to overcome us and we're not going to be able to repair any relationship. So how many of us have a poor relationship with our parents or our siblings or our spouse or friends where we can simply reach out with a message or a phone call and we can say, hey, or we can meet up in person in a safe way and we can say, hey, I just want to say Ramadan is starting. Ramadan is here. We're in the month of Ramadan. Whenever you do it, and say, I just want to seek your forgiveness. I know that I made a mistake and I apologize. And I hope that you have it in you to forgive me for the mistake that I made. Just saying that and seeing what happens. Now, you don't control the other side. And this is another reason why we don't do this. Another reason why human beings don't apologize is because we're afraid that the person is not going to forgive us. So we're like, well, why would I put myself in that vulnerable position if it's not going to be reciprocated and I'm going to be made to feel even worse? You shouldn't feel bad if you apologize, even if the person does not forgive you, because you are doing what is beloved to Allah. And what the person does is their own decision. And that's between them and Allah. You have to do what you can do. And then what they do in response is between them and Allah. But you need to make sure that you clear the record with people that you have some tension or some friction with, so that it doesn't hold us back from greater heights spiritually, okay? Another area where we can do things outside of fasting and praying is to provide iftar, right? This can obviously be one of the ways that we give charity, but not just as a form of charity, not just providing iftar to those who are in need, those who are financially in distress, but to provide iftar for people like our neighbors, our friends, right? To take care of dinner and iftar for those people is one of the great deeds that a person can do. The Prophet ﷺ said that for the person who breaks the fast of another person, meaning that they provide the food that will break that person's fast, then that person, the provider, will get a share, a copy of the reward without taking anything away from the one who did the fasting themselves, right? So there's different ways. And this is especially important for those people who can't fast. So for somebody, I know there was a sister 3 years ago. I was so inspired by her. She was expecting one of her children. She was pregnant, and she couldn't fast. So on the first day of Ramadan, without even telling us, right, we had already prepared our iftar, and we had, we were waiting, and it was about 10 minutes before Maghrib. We get a knock at our door. The doorbell rings, and we open it, and there she is. And she's holding like this massive bag of food. Okay, now you can do what you like. You can buy the food, you can cater it, whatnot. She chose to cook it herself. She cooked it. And it was this huge, like rice and meat and salad and sweets. Like it was dinner for God knows how many. And it was just for us, me and my wife, and at the time, just Musa, just our son. And I looked at her, and I looked in her car. She was parked in my driveway, and she had like 6 or 7 bags just like this one. And she wrote our name on it, and on those bags, different names. So I asked her, what are you doing? She goes, I can't fast this year. I can't fast because I'm pregnant. So I'm making food every day for people. and I'm going to break the fast of another person every day. I'm going to break somebody else's fast. If I can't fast, then I'm going to be the food that somebody else breaks their fast with. I'm going to give it to them. Right? That's amazing. That's like genius. That is genius spiritual strategy, right? See, a lot of times people get down and we say, "Well, it's not fair. Why can't I fast? Or why can't?" But a person who's seeking Allah, they will find a way. They will find a way to get to Allah. You know, it doesn't matter what road. One road's closed, I'll go another way. Just like when we want to go somewhere, I don't care if the highway's closed. I'm going to take local roads. I don't care if the highway is blocked. I'm going to take the expressway. I'll pay the toll. You know, like there's a hot chicken place here called Ricky's in Dallas. It's so good, but it's far from my house. And one day there was construction on the road and I really wanted to go. My friend was with me and we said, let's just take the tollway. And it was like the expressway. It was like $5 each route. And we just took it because we wanted to get it, right? Like when you want it, you know, that's what Alfred Adler said, the great psychologist, that when you want something, you'll get it, right? So she's like, look, I want to come close to Allah this Ramadan. I'm not going to let being pregnant stop me, you know? So sisters, if you're not praying, right? If you're not fasting or praying because you're on your period that week, get creative, right? Get creative. Maybe you can go and you can facilitate different ways that maybe you can buy a prayer rug, right? You can buy a few prayer rugs and you can hand them out to people and you can say, can you pray on this? Sadaqah jariyah. Like every time a person prays on that, guess who gets the reward for prayer? You do, right? I'm going to give you some food. Can you have iftar with this? Yeah, of course, right? Now you weren't able to fast that day, but guess what? Now you've provided somebody else's ability to break their fast. So doing things for friends. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ahabul a'mali ilallah," that one of the most beloved deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to idkhal al-mu'min ala sururi, to enter somebody into a state of happiness. So to buy your friends some nice gifts, to take care of some of their needs, to drop off some food, to send some food. No reason. It's Ramadan, right? But this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves, okay? So that's the third thing. First is character refinement, purification of the heart. Second is charity. Third is family and friends, bettering those relationships, spending time with those people, spending time with your family and friends, okay? And this is something that I'm going to say, like husbands, sons, brothers, you are not being fed by your servants, okay? Males, men in the world, help cook and clean the kitchen for iftar. You are not. Everyone is just as tired and hungry as you are. You are not, by definition, excluded from the activities of the kitchen because you have a Y chromosome. That's not how it works, and there's no ayah or hadith that I am aware of that teaches us that. Okay? So it doesn't matter. If you can't cook, then don't cook. If you can't cook, please don't cook. But you can do a lot of other things to help out, okay? To make sure that everybody is taken care of. Iftar is not the responsibility of women, okay? Women also have to use Ramadan to get close to Allah. Men and women both, all right? Men and women have to get close to Allah both. So everybody has to come together in a way that fits in their home, in roles that have been decided amongst themselves, to make sure that everybody has an equal chance to take advantage and to go to the masjid and to worship. Husbands, if you have young kids and your wife has not prayed Taraweeh at the masjid in 10 years, you're going to answer to Allah for that. If you don't give her the chance to go to the masjid because somehow it's your God-given right and you don't want to spend time with the kids and put them to bed, may Allah protect us, man. We have to step up. We have to step up. It is what it is. I'm sorry. Call me whatever you want. I'm married with 2 kids. I don't care what you think about me at this point, right? We have to step up. I've heard tragic stories about the Ramadan of women. And it's just this weird cultural assumption. No. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. The Prophet ﷺ was known for cleaning and sweeping. He was known for mending his sandals. He was known for being involved. Just get involved. And you know what? If everybody does something, it helps everybody, right? Take turns switch roles, right? Okay, Monday you're gonna tarawih. I'll put the kids to bed. Tuesday you're gonna put the kids to bed. I'll go to tarawih, right? Or maybe there's tarawih and there's qiyam, right? There's tarawih and there's qiyam. So you go tarawih, I'll go to qiyam. There's so many different solutions. There's so many different configurations that we can figure out. Or take your kids to the masjid and you can pray a little bit and you can sit with them. Dude, when my children were young, when Musa was younger, I used to sit with him in my lap and read Quran to him that the Imam was reading. I used to go over it with him so that my wife could pray, right? And then after 4 rak'ah or whatnot, 8, 4, however long we were there for, we would just switch. And that way we both got in the car feeling connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, closer to Allah, right? There's so many things you can do that can help everybody in your life have a great Ramadan. So remember that. And this is a responsibility. You heard it from me. It's not some sort of like random, I'm not just saying this to feel good. We have to step up. We have to step up. Men cannot just be served in Ramadan. That's not right. May Allah Ta'ala protect us. The last thing, and then we'll take questions, is seeking knowledge. Seeking knowledge. Replace the time that you spend. Replace the time that you spend consuming other types of content. Replace that with some sort of books, lectures, series that you want to learn about your deen with. Right? Knowledge is power. And if a person has spent years in the academic arena of their life, gaining degree after degree, right? High school, undergrad, grad, professional, medical, law, dental, whatever. Come on, man. We haven't given even a couple of days worth of knowledge to Islam. We have to step up, right? We've done so much for our secular studies. Pick a book. And I want everyone here to pick one book that they're going to finish in the month of Ramadan. The Quran is one of them. Okay. So pick another book. Pick a second book. Okay. Pick a second book that I want you to finish in the month of Ramadan. I have my Twitter feed, that pinned tweet, Islamic English books that I recommend. Pick one of them and buy it for the month of Ramadan. I want you to finish it. Okay. Because Lord knows there's a whole lot of Netflix and a whole lot of podcasts that we've been listening to and a whole lot of that we waste so much time. If we just read for 45 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, you would finish maybe even 3-4 books a month. So Ramadan is a perfect chance for that. Gain knowledge, seek knowledge, and make sure that you keep that habit up afterwards. We will pause here, inshallah. There's so many different things, but those 4 things I want to leave you with. The 4 things I want to leave you with, and we'll share a graphic that has this, inshallah, are purifying the heart, being charitable and generous. It's the month of Ramadan. Got to be generous. Family and friends, relationships, fixing them and maintaining and growing those relationships. And number 4, seeking knowledge. We'll go ahead and open up to Q&A. Batul and Ahad will manage that on Clubhouse. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We'll call you to the stage. If you have any questions on Instagram, then we'll take questions on Instagram as well, inshallah. Bismillah. Okay. All right. I have a good question here on Instagram that I'll get started with. And then meanwhile, we can have people on the stage in Clubhouse, inshallah. Really good question is, I find myself not being able to finish what I start. Is there any tip on changing that? So I can share with you what I do. I'm not a psychologist. I did get my master's degree in mental health, although I'm not licensed. So I don't do licensing. I don't do license counseling, but I will give from a theoretical, I finished my coursework. So from a theoretical perspective, what I can tell you, things that work for me, things that work for my, experience, and maybe it'll work for you. I try to make sure that I not only think about what I have to do, but how I'm going to do it. So if I know that I have to read a book, okay, let's say, for example, here's a really good book. It's a translation of Imam al-Ghazali's Ihya fi Ulum al-Din, Ihya Ulum al-Din on Zakat and Siyam, okay? So this book, you can see it's not too big. And let's see how many chapters the translation has. So the translation has 1, 2, 3, 4 chapters. But this book is pretty short. It's 80 pages, okay? So I know I want to read this book. What do? I have to sit with a calendar and I have to actually tell myself day number 1, okay, if I want to finish this in 1 month, I want to finish 80 pages in 1 month. Then what do? I take the amount of pages there are, 80, and I divide it by the amount of days that I have, 30. And I know that I have to read at least 2.5 to 3 pages a day, right? Now, many of us have goals, but we don't understand how to accomplish it. We don't think about how to accomplish those goals. So I really try to make sure that I don't only think of what I want to do, but how I'm going to do it. And if the how is super complicated or super overwhelming, like just planning it seems like too much, that's a pretty good indication that it's going to be really difficult to accomplish. So start small and start with realistic goals. Make sure you strategize them. And yeah, that's what I would do, inshallah. Try to make sure that you don't only think about what you want to do, but how you're going to do it. Okay? Wallahu alam. Okay, we have a question on Clubhouse. Maliha, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for this room. It's been so insightful. I've just been taking loads of notes. Unfortunately, so I have 2 quick questions. The first being that I actually missed the first half of this room. So is there a place where there's like notes on the resources, or is on your live stream, does it stay up for a little longer? So can we catch up on some of the notes that we've missed out on?
Yes. So on my Instagram, I think it automatically saves it to IGTV, the Instagram thing. So it'll be on there, inshallah. The full recording. If you don't want to watch the full recording, I understand. I wouldn't either. So I can share some notes on Twitter, inshallah. We can post some of that on Twitter, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. That's so useful. My second question is a little bit about addressing the non-Muslim aspect. So I think you touched on one of the most beautiful mechanisms is, making iftar and sending it over to perhaps your neighbors and doing a form of like indirect da'wah. So in the workplace, I personally run a faith network at work. So it's interfaith. But one of the aspects of the things that we want to do in Ramadan, besides just running some Muslim sessions, is like an interfaith iftar. And I wanted to speak for like a few minutes about the essence of Ramadan, but from a non-Muslim perspective. So so basically getting the message across, but being able to basically say the right sorts of things that are most impactful. So I just wanted to get a feel for if there's anything that you think is particularly important that could be mentioned, particularly when you're like trying to give dawah.
Okay, really good question, Maliha. Thank you for asking. Wow. So the first session that we did in this series was on the essence of Ramadan, and some things that come to mind that would be helpful in introducing Ramadan to an audience of primarily people who are not Muslim is, I'm a big fan of letting the Quran and the Hadith kind of speak. And I don't feel the need, and I'm not saying you or anyone else does, but I don't feel the need personally to like alter or edit or change what's being said. I just feel the need to explain it. So, for example, we know that Ramadan, Allah Ta'ala says that Siyam, the act of fasting, is so that maybe perhaps those people who fast the month of Ramadan will gain this characteristic known as taqwa. And taqwa is something that Muslims are familiar with. It's a characteristic that Muslims are, we aspire, we yearn to have taqwa. But how do you translate it, right? And so the translation that I have found to be most accurate when you look it up in the different dictionaries and stuff, in the Arabic dictionary, is God consciousness. It's not only fear, it's not only hope, it's not only protection, but it's a state of being that a person achieves in order to remember Allah, that allows that person to do the right thing. When the Sahaba used to define taqwa, they would say it's like walking through a path that was filled with thorny bushes and pulling your clothes tight to your body so that your clothes don't get ripped, right? So it's basically, living your life in a way where your iman is not going to get tarnished or torn. You're making decisions that are good decisions. You're making cautious choices and decisions. So how would I translate all of that to a general audience? And I would say that the month of Ramadan by design is filled with different acts of worship, like fasting and charity and prayer, that are meant to bring us back to a state of God consciousness, where we make decisions whether or not people are watching us. We make the right choices. Because when I'm fasting, it's such a private deed. Nobody knows. Nobody knows that I'm fasting, right? Like I could tell people I'm fasting and then go drink water, go have a sandwich like off to the side. So because I'm having to do this very private, very sincere deed, now my heart is being primed and it's being oriented towards sincerity. So now I've basically proved that I can make good decisions when nobody's watching. If I'm struggling with a certain desire or a certain indulgence or I can make the right choice even when nobody's around, because I've shown that for 30 days, by not breaking my fast without reason, I have made the right choice without anybody knowing. So I would basically just try to take the Islamic concept, try to explore what it means to me, and then give some tangible examples that would further clarify that explanation, and keep it very simple. Keep it very simple. Ramadan, when I talk to people who are not Muslim and they ask what is Ramadan, I always say it's about developing a relationship with God that allows us to make good choices when nobody's watching, right? That's essentially what I say. And from there, I just let the conversation flow. But I would also suggest, Maliha, that you try to share, personal reflections on Ramadan, because typically that's what resonates with people the most.
That's really beautiful. Jazakallah khair. So very useful.
Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, couple questions that we have here while we wait for more people on Clubhouse. We have some. Can I take the COVID vaccine while I'm fasting? Yes, you can. For those of you in England, that's a jab. Okay. Sirah book recommendations. I just finished Muhammad by Martin Links. Check out my Twitter account. I have a thread that I've pinned to the top, which is English book recommendations. English book recommendations. I have some Sirah books on there. Anybody else that on Clubhouse in the meantime that wants to ask a question, feel free. Instagram, we have a couple. Are these sessions recorded? Yeah, they're on my IGTV on my Instagram, so you should be able to find them there. Anyone? Oh, we have Shuraib. Assalamu alaikum, Shuraib.
So I wanted to ask about how we approach the English translations of the Quran, and reflect on them.
Okay, good. So the question is, how do we approach, and at what status does like an English translation of the Quran have in the life of a Muslim? It is a necessary but not complete resource, right? And what I mean by that is that, for those of us who maybe haven't studied the Arabic language to the degree that we wanted to, okay? Once you start studying, you'll be able to start kind of peeling away the meanings and understanding what's being recited and what's being said. But even then, there are many layers to language, and really the Quran, the more mastery of the Arabic language, the more that is revealed to the person who is studying that language, right? So then what is allowed and what is accessible to a person who's not engaging with it in the original Arabic? I would say reflection, realization, resource for a person's relationship with Allah, coming to understand the meanings of what's been revealed, are all accessible via translation and via the explanation, i.e. the tafsir, some of which have also been translated. Okay, what can a person not do with a translation? A person cannot explain definitively. So there's a difference. What's the difference? The difference is, a reflection is, man, this verse makes me think about That's a reflection. What is an explanation is, this verse means So we are absolutely encouraged and told to reflect on the Quran, which again is, this verse makes me think about, or this verse reminds me about, or this verse shows me that I should, or this verse, that's reflection. Everybody should be doing that all the time. But to speak definitively that this is what God intended, and this is what God meant by this verse, that cannot be done without tafsir and mastery of the Arabic language. Okay, because that's where the Prophet ﷺ tells us, or Abdullah bin Abbas tells us, or Ibn Umar tells us that the Prophet ﷺ told us that this verse means this, and that's where we have the definitive meaning of those things. So when it comes to what the resource is and what the limitation is and what the ceiling is, I would say that it's the ceiling for a person reading of the translation of the Quran in whatever language that they can is a very good ceiling for 99.9% of people. They'll be able to benefit. And that's why we do a session called Heart Work at Roots. And I actually purposely avoid the Arabic. I try not to do a lot of Arabic explanation because I want everybody to gain comfort in being able to read it in English and understand it. What are some of the legal questions about having wudu, for example? You don't have to have wudu if you're reading a majority English copy of the Quran, because technically the Quran is the Arabic Quran. That's why if you look at the translation of the Quran in English, they don't just call it the Quran. Usually they'll say the meanings of or the translation of. So technically you can, without wudu, read it. But however, I would say, out of good adab, if you can make wudu, then make it. Right? If you can, then you can make it, inshallah. Wallahu alam. I hope that helps. Shoaib, did that help?
Yeah, it did help. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks again. Thanks for coming.
You should come to the NYU Tandon MSA and do events with us, inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Once I'm vaccinated, so I'll be able to I'll come soon, inshallah. We have a question here on Instagram. Before we get to Nada, I'll have you come next, inshallah. Tips on making the most of Ramadan while dealing with the stress of college. I would extend this to anybody who is stressed out and very busy during the month of Ramadan. You need to capitalize on the minutes, not the hours. Spending a minute or 5 minutes making dua when you're a busy person can be more beloved to Allah than spending a whole night in the masjid with no focus if you're not a busy person. If you take 5 minutes and you're super busy, you got kids, you're in college, you're, not both of those. Maybe you do, maybe you have kids in college, but you have kids or you're in college or you're working or you have just a lot of responsibility. And you just take 3 minutes to talk to Allah and open up versus somebody who just kind of goes to the masjid because there's food being served and they kind of hang around with their friends, pray rak'ah here, rak'ah there. Just kind of chill, play some basketball, hang around, just kind of talk to everybody. Again, that's good. Being in the masjid is good, but which one of those is more beloved to Allah? Based on my knowledge of what I've read about in these matters, it would be somebody who is super focused and super devoted during that time, especially when they don't have a lot of time to give in the first place. So you need to focus on the minutes, not the hours. Do you have a few minutes for Allah? And by the way, when you give 5 and you give 10 and you give 10 more and 5 more later and 5 and 10, you'll realize that, wow, I spent an hour today making dua or thanking Allah for something or making dhikr. I spent an hour just because I gave 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time. After every prayer, take 5 minutes, sit there and make dua, make dhikr, and see what happens. Right? See what happens, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. Nada, assalamu alaikum.
So I have 2 questions. So the first one is if you have any Arabic book recommendations from the least difficult to the most difficult.
Okay.
And the second one, I personally do know Arabic, but I don't know. I think I kind of want to get more into it, but whenever I pick a book, I feel like it's maybe too difficult for me. So yeah, I would like kind of more variety of stuff, and even maybe in the future, inshallah, I can even read those complex books. And the second one, I wanted to know what is from your opinion, the best way to learn further on purification of the heart from a practical sense? Because I feel like for me personally, I would hear a lot of lectures and things like that, but I feel like it doesn't hit me so hard from again, the practical sense. And also managing our time even more.
Okay. So Arabic book recommendations. I mean, there's a lot. It depends on kind of what field you like to read. I mean, there's There's books in Sirah that are really nice, the biography of the Prophet ﷺ. There's books and, like Tazkiyah-based books that you can read. There's a bunch. I might make a thread on Twitter of like Arabic book recommendations for different subjects, although, there's probably people in life that are, there definitely are people in life that are a lot more qualified to make that list, but I can share the ones that I like, and give sort of recommendations. I would recommend, especially if you're better at like spoken Arabic, which most Arab are, like most Arabs who are born kind of speaking Arabic, they're better at listening and translating than they might be reading. Because again, written classical textbook Arabic can be challenging. Even the vocabulary can be a little bit different. I would recommend like picking somebody to listen to and following that series in the month of Ramadan. And there's a lot of good, scholars that you can listen to. There's obviously some that have passed away, like Sheikh Sha'rawi, rahimahullah. There's some that are, still very much alive, alhamdulillah, and teaching, like Sheikh Kamali from Morocco, mashallah, hafidhullah, was a wonderful teacher. There's a bunch of different, people that you can listen to. So I would probably look for a series. And as far as Tazkiyat an-Nafs, learning it in a practical way, the Quran and the life of the Prophet ﷺ are the best explanations of Tazkiyat an-Nafs. The Quran and the Prophet ﷺ's life are. The reason why Tazkiyat an-Nafs, purification of the heart, books are needed is because the Quran is not separated by chapter of disease of the heart. You know what I mean? It's revealed. It's a revealed text. It's not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't send it down. Chapter 1, arrogance. Chapter 2, hasad, envy. Chapter 3, stinginess. Like, that's not how it was sent. But you can find all of those things mentioned in the Quran and through the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's teachings. So what I would do is that there's that Sheikh Hamza translation, Purification of the Soul, which is really good. And the reason why it's really good is because it's actually, he translated another Arabic book called Nukhbat al-Matlub, which is a commentary on that poem. And it's only in Arabic, but they have all the references to the ayat. So you'll be able to learn about these ayat in the context of purification of the heart. Right? Does that make sense? So I would really recommend finding a book that didn't just teach purification of the heart from like a kind of esoteric and unanchored perspective, because there are some books that are unanchored, and the authors don't mean poorly. They're not. Some of them write it and they assume that you know how to tie it back to the Quran already, right? That you know which verses are being referenced. And some of them, like Imam al-Ghazali, sometimes he'll use the same wording as the Quran without citing it because it's something that's so common. Like, for example, if I said, we either die a hero or live long enough to see ourselves become the villain, if anyone here is a good human being, then you know that I'm referencing Harvey Dent, right, from The Dark Knight. But I didn't tell you that. I just said it. And it's such a commonly known quote, or it should be. If it's not, may Allah forgive you. It's such a commonly known quote that I can say that, and without citing it, people know. So some scholars will do that, but there are some scholars that do a good job of referencing. So there's a good book called In the Early Hours. It's written by a man named Khurram Murad, rahimahullah, who wrote that text. He's from the UK. He lived in the 20th century, so he's contemporary. And you can read that book, and he's very practical about developing purification of the heart, taking it very seriously, understanding your own weaknesses, developing a game plan for yourself on how to stay away from whether it's backbiting or laziness or judgment, any of that stuff. He's very, very good. So In the Early Hours is what I would recommend, inshallah. I hope that helps, Nada.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Sorry, what's the name of the author again?
His name is Khurram Murad, Khurram, Murad, Murad. That's actually on my Twitter, in my bio here on Clubhouse, and also on my Twitter account. My pinned thread is a list of books that I recommend in English, because that was probably the number one question I was getting from everybody, which is what books do you recommend? So it's on that list. So you can check that out, inshallah. Hope that helps. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for coming on. And inshallah, we're going to be wrapping up. I know we got a bunch of questions on Instagram. How do I encourage my mom, UK, to make her see the importance of focusing on her ibadah and make the most of Ramadan instead of cooking a lot of food for family and neighbors? So cooking food for family and neighbors is part of our ibadah. It is, but of course, it is important for those who cook and those who clean and those who take care of everybody in the home to know that they still should try to engage in other forms of ibadah. So my recommendation to Sister Muna, who asked this question, a really good question, by the way, is try to step in and help and allow her even the breathing room and the space to maybe be able to take some time for dua for herself, to take some time to make dua for herself and to pray and to have that moment, inshallah, by herself. We ask Allah Ta'ala to facilitate. Barakallahu feekum, everybody. It is time now to close up the room because, inshallah, we have Maghrib here in Dallas that's been in for a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that we get to pray Maghrib on time. Barakallahu feekum, everybody. Next week, inshallah, is a lightning round session on the fiqh of fasting, the do's, the don'ts, the must-do's, the must-nots, the what-ifs. That's going to happen next Wednesday, inshallah, with special guest Sheikh Abdul Nasser, Jangda, inshallah, and hopefully also Mufti Hussein Kamali. Barakallahu feekum, everybody. We ask Allah Ta'ala to grant us the best Ramadan of our lives, to give us moments of realization and discovery in this month that we've never had before. And we ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to purify our hearts and allow us to be ready to receive this sacred guest. Ameen, 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 ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Take care, everybody. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.